Hello and welcome to this Junior's Gasoline Alley, where today we're going to do some preventative maintenance, or scheduled maintenance you might call it, on my GMC Sierra. This is a 2020 model without that badge, which means we've got the 4-cylinder inside of it, and unlike the V8 trucks, the spark plugs need to be changed every 60,000 miles instead of 100K. Well, my truck's a bit overdue at 72,000, but not too bad because we've got a new set of AC Delco spark plugs, and we're going to get it installed, and I'll show you how. So follow along to make this job pretty easy. And to install the spark plugs on your truck, here are the recommended tools that I would suggest you have to be able to do so. First off, in your selection of tools, you're going to need an 8mm, a 10mm, and then preferably a 9/16 spark plug socket. But in my case, I only have a 16-point socket, but deep weld to be able to go over the spark plugs. You'll need a spark plug gap tool. That way you can make sure they're gapped right. Although if you buy this part number, which of course I'll have everything linked down below, that part number does come factory gapped and it was proper at 0.3. Past that, you do need a torque wrench for tightening everything back up, a selection of extensions, of course a ratchet, and then if you don't have a spark plug tool, you'll need this magnetic picker-upper, a ratchet tool, as well as an impact. Do make the task go quicker, but that's what you're going to need. Now, of course, everything starts with getting under the hood, and under the hood, you'll see that the whole engine is going to be covered up by this piece of plastic with two 10mm bolts. Now, those are going to come out without any fanfare, but make sure not to lose the bolts, because now when you lift up, you can pull straight out, and your cover is going to come off. It's important to know you've got these two hooks in the back, because when you start putting it back together, you'll want to make sure you get it slid in right. Next on deck is to get down to your spark plug. You've got to remove the coil that's on the top. So for that, they're going to be 8mm. So I've got this 8mm socket on top of my ratchet. Make sure you have it in reverse, and let's pull these off. Move this little hose to get to it. There we are. Both of these bolts are going to be captured, but to get your plug off, you're just going to pull straight up. And it's going to have a little bit of resistance. Make sure everything's undone. Right off it'll go. Now, in a perfect world, you would take the connector off. This particular guy, I fussed with it a little bit. We can do the job without removing it, so let's save ourselves potential hassle of breaking that connector and just lay everything to the side. Now, one thing you'll notice when we're all the way down in there is going to be your spark plug is pretty far below, and down there is a 9/16 spark plug. So if you have a 9/16 spark plug socket, that's great. Most sets starts at 5/8. So instead, I'm going to have to use a standard 16-point and a little magnet to be able to pull it up. And of course, wanting to be careful, I'm going to do this with a hand wrench, just a ratchet to be able to loosen it up. So we'll get that loose and just lefty-loosey to be able to pull the spark plug out. Of course, it's not going to come up because this isn't a spark plug socket. And then with our magnet, we can slide down, pull our old spark plug out. We've got our new spark plug right here and the old one there. And you can see the old one's definitely worn the diode a bit. These are iridium plugs. And these spark plugs are coming from the factory pre-gapped. But just to check it, it should be a 0.3, which in case here, we're good. 0.25 obviously goes right through. So we're in good shape. Let's take our magnet and spark plug and send this puppy down in. Take our wrench, righty-tighty. And of course, we're going to want to torque the spark plug in properly. For this truck, 13 foot-pounds is what we're going to need to raise ourselves up to. So here, take a look. Keep going to get it up to roughly 13. Should be right about there. Then we'll just get our torque on. And with it all torqued down, we can go ahead, slide our coil pack right back on and get everything threaded back into place. And we'll hit these with a torque wrench as well, because we want these guys to go down to 8 foot-pounds. And then you can go ahead and repeat the process for your second and third cylinder, and I'll meet back up with you for cylinder number 4, which requires a little extra work since it's under the cowl. So we're now on to the last one, which, of course, that guy is going to be the biggest problem of the bunch, mostly because you've got the cover, the mount for the cover going over it, and we've got to figure out how to get ourselves kind of height and up and in there. Now, it'll be much easier if you've got a selection of extensions. You know, for instance here, the top of the bulkhead barely has enough room, but for instance there, I can get that going. For the other one, I'm going to have to start that by hand and then take my ratchet to it once I'm on there. So get that loosened up and then loosen up. And so I'll finish taking the 2 bolts out of the ignition coil, and then I need to move on to 4 nuts that are screwing down that carrier for the engine cover. Now that rear carrier to hold the engine cover, that absolutely has to be removed to be able to get the ignition coil off of the spark plug. But man, is it in a fussy position. As you see with the height of the cowl underneath the windscreen and the way the engine's placed, this is a bit annoying to get after. Also, you do have these small little 10 millimeter nuts that are on the end of a stud. I'll move over to the passenger side and you'll see we're going to do the same thing over on the passenger side of the vehicle. And there's 2 over here. Be super careful not to lose them because, well, it's going to be difficult to see and get that to come off. I'm not showing you too well, but I was able to pull the ignition coil up, basically pushed it over to the side, and now I can start going after the spark plug that is down, way down into that recessed hole inside of the engine. And you'll also notice that I'm using 2 extensions together and a 84 tooth ratchet to be able to get at this. It's a snug area, but with a little bit of threading, we're going to be able to loosen that up and begin pulling the spark plug out. Same as the other 3, just pull that out, grab your magnet to be able to get at the spark plug and be able to pull it straight up. I'll place the new spark plug back down in and then go ahead and tighten that up just like the others and torque down the spark plug while we're at it. It is a very fussy area, but ooh, is that good when you're finished? Because now you can slide the ignition coil back down in. Make sure to get it well seated. You don't want to get back into this except for another 60 some odd thousand miles later when you need to replace these again. So slide that down. You're then going to just tighten down those 2 bolts that are on the top of the ignition coil. And then we're going to move on to going after the carrier for the rear of the engine cover. That's just going to slip back down into place, and you'll be careful, but with your hands, you'll be able to slide those little nuts back onto the stud. And once they're threaded on by hand, go ahead and feel free to grab your ratchet and snug those back down. There's 4 of them. Get all 4 back on. Getting those nuts on is tricky, but take your time to get it done right. Now with everything bolted back down, you can slide that engine cover back on. The rear, remember, has 2 hooks to slide into place, and then you have 2 bolts in the front that we can then use our ratchet to snug those guys up as well.
And that's pretty much it. Time to fire up and see how it runs.
And we'll go ahead and give it a chance to fire up. Make sure everything runs right. And just like that, easy enough, all done, nothing more to do.
Hope that helps you with your own project. And if you run into any questions or tips to give others, go ahead and put those in the comment section down below and consider subscribing if you got value out of this video.